I leaned back in my chair, looked around the room, and thought, so many beautiful women in the room, why did Mike Holden choose my wife? Why did she say yes? Why did she leave me? Our children were getting older and more self-sufficient. They would soon be out of the house. Jessica and I had already discussed what we'd like to do when the kids weren't home. Many months ago, a small part of my mind wondered what the relationship between Jessica and I would be like. Of course, I assumed that we would be able to spend more quality time together, becoming closer. And then it hit me like a proverbial ton of bricks: Jessica's plans for the future may not include my presence. I felt like a complete fool. That thought evaporated all my sadness and disappointment, leaving me with only my anger. I could tell from the worried looks from those around the table that my facial expression gave them the impression that my head was about to explode or that I was about to do something very, very stupid. "Are you okay, Jim?" David asked nervously. 4 beautiful young women sat in a booth at the other end of the dance floor. I could see them right over David's shoulder. Why didn't Mike Holden choose one of them? I watched the 4 ladies for a moment, then I started laughing very loudly. Everyone at the table looked scared by my laughter. I laughed so hard that people were looking at our table. I had tears streaming down my face when my laughter finally died down. I wiped away my tears and gave everyone a big smile. I realized that my life had just changed dramatically. I was no longer in a monogamous relationship. I no longer had to worry about my wife's feelings because my wife no longer cared about mine. Everyone stared at me. I smiled at David, took the wedding ring off my finger, and handed it to the amazed David. "Tell this to Jessica when you see her. I have things to do." I stood up and threw a 10 on the table. "This is for my drink. Since you encouraged Jessica's cheating so much, you can pay for it." When I left the table, my former friends called me. As I left the club, I wondered what I would say to them if they tried to follow me. The only thing I was sure of was that if any of the husbands followed me and did not heed my warning, I would break their nose. As I walked, my thoughts were racing. Jessica was going to have selfish fun, I was going to have selfish fun myself. When I arrived at the hotel, I asked the young woman at the front desk if they had any full-size suites available. She told me no, but if I was looking for a bigger room, there would be a honeymoon suite available. She listed many of the amenities available in the room. "I will take it. We will not be able to rent out the room you are in now since it is already late at night. I'll pay for both rooms. My wife will be staying in the original room, and I will be staying in the suite." The young woman looked at me strangely for a moment. "I thought you were doing something special for your wife." After she gave me the key card to my new room and directions to get there, I told her, "If my wife asks for the key to my room, don't give it to her. In fact, could you please leave specific instructions so that no one tells my wife that I'm still at the hotel if she asks?" The young girl had a curious look and a smile on her face. "I will make sure that the hotel staff is informed of your request." I went up to my old room and collected my clothes, leaving all of Jessica's clothes and personal items in the trash cans. I took the elevator to the top floor. The honeymoon suite was huge and even had a jacuzzi on the large balcony overlooking the city. I bought an expensive tuxedo with me in case we decided to drink late at one of the more fashionable restaurants nearby. I put on my jacket and headed back to the club, stopping at the ATM to withdraw some cash. When I returned to the club, there was a long line to get in. I approached the doorman as if I owned the place. He asked if he could help me. I smiled at him and gave him a $100 bill. He smiled back, opened the door, and let me in. My former friends were sitting at the table when I entered. I looked around the club, hoping to see what I had seen before, a table at the side of the dance floor with 4 beautiful young women sitting at it. There weren't any men with them, so it must have been some kind of bachelorette party. Perfect for me. I walked through the entire club. David noticed me as I walked past the table and tried to wave and call me by name. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. I paid no attention to them as I crossed the hall and casually approached a table with 4 ladies. For what reason are 4 beautiful ladies sitting unaccompanied? All 4 ladies smiled at me. The taller brunette laughed loudly and said, "We're here with our girlfriend." The stupid guy left her for some __, and were cheering her on. The brunette was definitely tipsy. "Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to dance with your friend and get a chance to cheer her up." She turned to the petite redhead. The redhead smiled and extended her hand to me so that I could help her out of the booth. When we started dancing, I asked her name. "Samantha." "My name is Jim." "How could you date such an idiot that he could let such a beautiful woman go?" "Because he's an ___." I laughed and smiled at her. We talked a little while dancing. She went to college to become a nurse and grew up nearby. The song ended and a slower song began. We continued to dance. The music was not so loud, and Samantha asked, "Are you married, Jim?" "We broke up." "Was it your wife who danced with Mike Holden earlier?" I noticed that she disappeared after that dance. "You noticed this, right?" "Everyone in the club noticed it, Jim." I gave Samantha my best smile. "I think you found out that we broke up at the same moment that I found out." Samantha smiled warmly at me, and we danced very close until the end of the song. We had both recently been hurt by someone we cared about, and it felt good to hold each other. When the song ended, we returned to Samantha's table. Samantha said to the others at the table, "I know we agreed that no men would sit with us, but I want Jim to stay with us." The brunette, clearly trying to play with me and Samantha. "I don't know, we agreed that there would be no guys. How about I buy a couple of bottles of champagne to make up for it?" "I don't know, a deal is a deal." Samantha smiled at all three and said, "We saw Mike Holden leave with his wife." 3 voices at once shouted out, "Not a damn thing." 3 ladies walked around the booth to make room for Samantha and me. Before I could get any names, the blonde next to Samantha asked, "Do you guys have an open marriage?" "Absolutely not." Then another blonde asked, "What did she tell you?" "Nothing. She told me she went to the toilet and snuck out through the back of the club with Mike." I pointed my thumb over my shoulder without turning around, and all my former ___ friends covered for her. At that moment, the waitress came over. I asked if everyone liked champagne, and everyone smiled. 2 bottles of your most expensive champagne." The girls applauded. Before they could ask me another question, I introduced myself. Their names were Kim, Chrissy, and Susan. They were all studying to be nurses with Samantha. After the champagne arrived and everyone drank a full glass, Chrissy, the brunette, asked me, "What are you going to do with your wife?" "As far as I understand, we broke up the moment she walked out the door." "Do you have children?" "Unfortunately, yes. A boy and a girl, 15 and 13 years old. But in a few more years, they will be left to their own devices, and I am going to change my wife." Samantha took my arm and said loudly, "To hell with it. You're with me tonight." We all clinked glasses and drank champagne. I told the girls a few jokes. They told me several jokes. We laughed and drank. They danced with some guys and with each other. Samantha remained sitting with me, her arm wrapped around me. Towards the end of the evening, Chrissy got angry, jumped up from the table, and ran away. We all turned to see where she was going. It turned out that David decided to come talk to me, but Chrissy stopped him near my ex-friend's table. We couldn't hear what was said, but we could see them talking loudly to each other. It ended after Chrissy started poking David's chest multiple times while screaming in his face. David cried and sat down again. Chrissy then lashed out at everyone at the table. All the tables around them laughed at the embarrassment of my former friends. When Chrissy returned, Kim and Susan high-fived her. Chrissy drank champagne, smiled at me, and said, "None of these idiots are going anywhere near this table for the rest of the evening." I turned around and looked at their table. They all got up to leave. Jane and David were both crying. None of them looked in our direction. "What did you say, Chrissy?" "I saw this woman gain the courage to come and talk to you, so I pushed her away and let them know what I thought about people who help cheaters. You made a great impression. They clearly wanted me to forgive Jessica, to ease their conscience. For this, I have to kiss you." Samantha grabbed my head and said, "Oh no, you shouldn't." And she kissed me hard on the lips while the other 3 girls encouraged her. After finishing her kiss, Samantha smiled sweetly at me. Kim said, "Get a room, you two." Well, actually, I said I have a suite in a hotel down the block, and you ladies look like you can't drive. If we hurry up, we can still order champagne to our room. After I paid the bar tab, the four of us headed to the hotel. Samantha clung to my arm, and the other three clung to us for support. At the reception, I ordered 4 bottles of champagne for my room. When I told the receptionist that my room was a honeymoon suite, all the ladies started giggling. Rising in the elevator, the 3 ladies began to sing the wedding march. Samantha turned beet red but clung to me even tighter. As we approached the door of the room, the ladies began to laugh, saying that I should carry the bride over the threshold. Samantha looked at me with her big beautiful eyes and said, "You don't have to if you don't want to." I pushed the door open, picked Samantha up in my arms, and carried her into the room. When I entered the room, Samantha put her arms around my neck and kissed me deeply. The ladies thought it was funny. They stopped teasing us when Chrissy noticed the jacuzzi on the balcony. Before I could put Samantha down, all 3 of them had stripped down to their bras and panties and were sitting in the jacuzzi. I put Samantha on the ground. She continued to hold my hand and smile at me. There was a knock on the door. It was champagne delivered to our room. We brought champagne to the ladies. They joked and giggled. Susan told me I was overdressed and needed to take it off. I laughed and told them I was keeping Samantha company. They yelled at Samantha to get into the jacuzzi, but she just smiled and pulled me back to the room. We headed to the bridal room, and her friends sang the wedding march from the balcony, laughing hysterically. This morning, I woke up with Samantha wrapped around me and 3 other naked ladies lying across a king-sized bed. They must have gotten in here after Samantha and I fell asleep. I slipped out of bed. Samantha watched me. I smiled at her, and she smiled back. "Did you have fun, Jim?" "Yes, best night of my life." "Any regrets?" "Absolutely none." "Come take a shower with me." Samantha slipped out of bed and dragged me to the bathroom, wanting to do something I'd never done with Jessica. As soon as we were in the shower, I picked Samantha up and sat her on my in a standing position. I then pushed her against the wall while she wrapped her legs around my waist. The standing position was grueling, but I had one of the best orgasms of my life. Samantha had come twice before, very loudly. When Samantha and I got out of the shower, we discovered that our loud lovemaking had woken up the ladies. They were hungover but happy, ordering room service and drinking mimosas. Chrissy said, "I can't wait to get in that shower." You two made it sound like it was the best shower ever. All 3 girls burst out laughing as Samantha and I smiled at each other. After everyone had showered, they left, except for Samantha, who asked if I would give her a ride home. While we were driving, she snuggled up to me. "Jim, I know what your wife did was terrible, but you can still go back to her. If you don't, I'd be glad if we could see each other again." Samantha smiled at me hopefully. "I would be glad of that too, Samantha. At the moment, I have no intention of staying with my ex-wife. I really had fun with you. You are what I need right now. So call me if you think we can be together." I kissed Samantha at her door. When she opened the door, Chrissy was sitting on the couch and smiled at me, waving as I left. I realized that I was putting off making a decision about what to do with Jessica. Returning to the club was a sudden reaction to Jessica's infidelity. It didn't solve my problem with Jessica, but it made me feel a lot better. When I got home, I took a break and plopped down in a chair in the living room. I didn't bother turning on the light because I was thinking about how to end my broken marriage with the least harm to my children. After a while, I have no idea how long, I heard a car in the driveway, then the key turning in the lock. Jim, I'm home." Her voice sounded exactly the same as it always did when she returned home from running errands. She closed the front door and turned on the light. I turned to look at her. She looked exactly the same. The blue dress still adorned her as in the evening. Dark hair flowed down her back in the same way, posture, shoulders, face, rings on her fingers, everything was exactly the same. It was as if nothing had changed at all, as if she hadn't spent all night and all morning betraying me with an __. This is impossible, I thought. There should be some visible difference, something indicating what she did, at least some shame on her face. There was nothing. "It's just me, the same old me as always," she said with a gentle smile. Of course she knew what I was thinking. Nothing has changed here. Nothing has changed. My love for you is exactly the same as yesterday. I wish I could say the same. Listening to myself, I realized how dispassionate it sounded. Jim, with the look of a dead gentleman. I stared at Jessica, pointing to our bedroom. Do not start. Go take a shower. After trying to say a few words while I kept pointing towards our bedroom, Jessica finally left. After her shower, she returned downstairs. Jim, where are my clothes from last night? I think in the hotel room where you left them. You didn't bring my clothes home? No. Did you leave something important there? Jessica looked like she was about to say something when she realized her next statement would be something about how inattentive I had been. Instead, she sat in silence as she realized how incredibly stupid that would sound. Why did you do that, Jessica? Jessica sighed. It was Mike Holden. He is rich and famous and can have any woman he wants. Last night, when he asked me to dance, I felt like the most popular girl in the room. He made me feel special. Jessica was still beaming from the night before as she said this. I saw that she had tuned out our conversation as she fondly recalled moments from the previous night. This was that moment when I realized it was truly over. Jessica will always cherish her time with Mike Holden more than any moment with me. I was just an afterthought. Do you love him? No, I don't love him. It was just sex. I love you, Jim. You and I have completely different understandings of how to treat the person you love. I could tell by the surprised look on Jessica's face that she felt entitled. I was just being a crybaby because my ego was hurt, which was sad because she crushed my ego purely to feed hers. I came back to you, Jim, because I love you. If he asked you to stay, to become his girlfriend or wife, would you be here now? Jessica hesitated, then noticed that I was watching. Of course not. I love you, Jim. You hesitated, Jessica. I understand what this look means. You would have been there if he asked. It was just one night. It was just sex. The discussion is over. I have something to think about. Pack some things for you and the children and stay with your parents for the whole week. But Jim. The discussion is over. If you really want to urgently solve the problem right now, given the way I'm feeling, you won't get the results you're hoping for. This time, there was anger in my voice and look. Jessica packed her bag and left. As soon as she was out of sight, I began to implement my plan. I had an epiphany when I saw Jessica standing at the entrance in her blue dress, looking completely unchanged. I knew something had to change if I was going to survive this. I called my boss and told him I needed 2 weeks off. I then rented a truck and bought some supplies at the hardware store, wood, drywall, paint, and 2 exterior doors. Once home, I grabbed my tools and got to work. First, I removed the front door. Once home, I grabbed my tools and got to work. First, I removed the front door and the windows surrounding the door. After cutting out a large empty space, I installed the 2 front doors. I placed the old front door on the right side and the new one on the left. I then framed the wall right along the main entrance in the middle of the house and laid down drywall. I was going to make a duplex. I installed a new back door on the left side where the new kitchen would be. The new kitchen would face the living room just like the other side. The office turned into a 3rd bedroom on the left side, my side. The dining room became the 3rd bedroom on the right side, Jessica's side. When I was finished, each side of the duplex matched almost exactly, except for the detached garage on Jessica's side. Later, I would build another garage on my side. I changed the lock on the garage and the code on the garage door so that only I had access. I also put up a fence in the backyard, cutting the backyard exactly in half. Now I had a duplex. I called my kids every day and told them I was working around the house. Jessica kept asking to talk, but I kept telling her that I was not in the mood to listen to what she had to say. I called Samantha a few days later just to hear her voice and maybe get a chance to spend more time with her. I thought you forgot about me. I cannot stop thinking about you. Are you going to ask me out on a date? No, stop teasing me. No, I'm really not going to ask you out. I was thinking more about going away for the weekend. Just you and me. Really? Yes. Where? The Bahamas. Sounds tempting. Can you go away this weekend? Fly on Thursday and return on Tuesday? Yes, yes, yes. Just take your phone and passport with you. We will buy everything we need there. After we told each other how much fun we were going to have, I had to let her go so I could pay for my plane ticket and book a hotel room. A last-minute trip to the Bahamas didn't come cheap, but what the hell? If Jessica divorces me, she gets half our savings and my salary to support the children. I smiled when I realized it was as if Jessica was paying for half the trip with Samantha. I transferred our savings account to a bank account in my name only. I also changed my salary so that it was deposited into the account. I didn't think Jessica would cancel the credit card, but I wanted to have access to the money just in case. I worked 16 hours a day to get all the walls in place. A little unfinished on my part. On Wednesday, I managed to trim and paint the center wall on Jessica's side. I knew that later I would have to separate the electricity, gas, and water, but for now, since Jessica's side shared the same gas and electricity, she couldn't turn off my side. On Wednesday night, I told Jessica to bring the kids home in the morning. On Thursday morning, I locked up my part of the house and sat on a chair out front, waiting for them to arrive. When they arrived and got out of the car, they all stood on the front lawn in a daze. Emma was the first to speak. "Dad, what did you do?" "I turned our house into a duplex." "Don't you like it?" All three turned and looked at me like I was an idiot. They stood there with their mouths open. "Don't worry, guys. I finished the right side and moved your things to your new rooms." I showed the kids the left side of the new house while Jessica carried the kids' bags to their rooms. They were dumbfounded. Our short tour ended with us all gathered in the living room on the right side of the house. "But, Dad, the living room is much smaller," Tommy said. "Don't worry, guys. You will never notice the difference. In fact, I need to install a garage on the other side of the house, and when I do that, I'm going to install a pool with a jacuzzi." This brought smiles to the children. Jessica told the children to unpack their bags. She looked at me like she wanted to talk to me, but I followed the kids, helping them put their things away and making sure they had what they needed. After they put their things away, I pulled out some sandwiches I bought at a local deli, and we ate lunch at the kitchen table. Emma asked me, "Dad, what is this all about?" But mostly she watched Jessica's reaction. After spending the last few days with Jessica, Emma and Tommy obviously knew something was wrong and that their mother was avoiding their questions. "Oh, we're getting closer to becoming empty nesters. I realize that things won't stay the same forever. I'm just getting ready, that's all." "Geez, Dad, you could at least discuss this with us first to see how we feel about it." "Well, actually, it was your mom's idea. She said she decided we needed a change and she needed something different." I stared at Jessica with a grin on my face. Jessica looked amazed. "Mom, why did you make such an important decision and not discuss it with us?" Emma asked. "Tommy, yes, Mom, don't you care what we think?" Jessica, looking confused. "It was just a misunderstanding. Your father misunderstood how I felt." "I don't know, honey. You made your intentions very clear then. In fact, once I saw that you were completely committed to your decision, I knew there was no turning back." Jessica looked like she was about to cry and left the room. Tommy asked, "What's wrong with Mom lately? She's been crying about everything." I shrugged and told them they should ask her. Before Emma could ask another question, I told them that I had a trip out of town planned and would be back in a few days. I told them that I would not be contactable during my trip but that I would call them every evening. I kissed the tops of their heads and quickly headed towards the door. I wondered if they noticed that I didn't say goodbye to their mom, who was in the bedroom. I picked Samantha up from her apartment and we hit the road. It was one of the best moments of my life. We flew first class, stayed at a 5-star resort, and were pampered like royalty. A weekend full of fun, sun, sand, waves, food, and drink. And even better, Samantha was very grateful and constantly tried to show how much she enjoyed being with me. By the time it was time to head back, we were both completely tanned, and I knew every inch of Samantha's fantastic body. On Tuesday, I dropped Samantha off at her apartment. Samantha kissed me very passionately at the front door. "Do you want to spend one more night with me?" Yes, I would love to, but I need to meet face to face sometime, and you have classes tomorrow. Call me before you go to bed. I need to hear your voice before I go to bed. I kissed her for the last time and said, with pleasure. I drove home, smiling to myself. Samantha told me last night that she could see herself falling in love with a guy like me. As I was driving down the street to my house, I saw Jessica's car parked in her driveway. I parked on the road in front of my part of the house to avoid Jessica. While I was unpacking, Jessica knocked on my front door. You arrived. Yes, I did. Can we talk? Of course. What do you want to talk about? Can I come in? No, you are not allowed to be on my side. To be clear, this is my personal living space, and you are not welcome on this side, ever. Jessica, clearly shocked, looked at me for a moment before turning to return to her side. The reality that I was not going to live on her side of the duplex had just become real. We were both sitting at her kitchen table. Jim, I love you, and I want everything to go back to normal. It will not happen. Why? Because if you haven't noticed yet, you did something that changed the way I feel about you forever. It shouldn't be like this. Actually, that's true. Nothing will undo what you did or how I feel about it. But I love you. I collected my thoughts. Let's say we were on a date as a couple with our friends. You left me and went with another man and spent the entire night and next morning having sex with him. If you had done this on our first date, would there have been a second? But Jim, it was Mike. I don't care who it was. You chose someone else over me. Jim, I keep trying to tell you that I didn't choose Mike over you. So you didn't choose to sneak out the back of the club? You didn't choose to have sex with Mike Holden? It was just one night. You've had your whole life to show me how much you love me. The moment someone more famous spoke to you, I turned into trash. Does this mean I should keep you away from all famous athletes, famous actors, famous politicians? You know there's a marathon this weekend. Are you going to have sex with the winner? Jim, this isn't fair. In a quiet, even tone, I said. So here it is now. You want me to be fair. You want a chance to minimize your betrayal, a good chance to talk me out of my anger over what you did, a good chance to shame me for feeling betrayed, a fair chance to accuse me of not putting our family before my own pain. I seem to be the only one who is expected to be fair in this relationship. I reached across the table and took her hand. She smiled and took my hand with both of hers. I looked deep into Jessica's eyes, knowing I was going to hurt her. Jessica needed to know exactly how our new relationship would develop in the future. And yes, I was also excited to show her what it was like. It's too late, Jessica. Too late? Yes, too late. I found another one. Jessica pulled her hands away from my palm as if my hand was on fire. Do you know who it is? I'm sure David and your friends told you who I was with that night after you left. The redhead I danced with, the one who held me tightly while we danced, the woman who replaced you on the anniversary you threw away. When the words, replaced you, and, threw you away, came to her, I looked into Jessica's eyes and saw sadness. I realized that David must have sent Jessica photos of Samantha and me slow dancing together, looking like lovers. With anger simmering in her voice, Jessica said, "Are you doing this to get back at me, throwing some 24-year-old girl in my face to get even?" Actually, she's 21. I spent 4 days with her in the Bahamas. You know, that dream vacation you and I always wanted to go on. It was magnificent. I knew I had a big smile on my face when I said it, but I couldn't help it. The weekend was truly magnificent. Jessica glared at me. After I finished speaking, I saw that my words made her very angry. I knew that the smirk on my face that I was left with increased her anger. I reminded myself of the children and took a deep breath, forcing my face to relax so that my grin disappeared. With a look in her eyes that I knew would be followed by some soul-searing condemnation, Jessica opened her mouth and pointed her finger at me. But when she saw my grin appear again, she realized that I knew every word she was going to say. Jessica froze. Then she exhaled slowly, closed her mouth, and placed her hand on the table. We sat quietly, staring at each other. I knew Jessica wanted to yell at me, set my ass on fire, put me in my place for what I had done. But she realized that she had no moral ground left to stand on. The leverage she was used to in our relationship was based on love and trust, the same love and trust that she casually erased for one night of sex. It finally dawned on Jessica that what she had done had cost her more than she had imagined. I'm sure that when Jessica decided to sleep with Mike, she thought she would just spend some of the chips she had accumulated over the years of our marriage. She finally had a suspicion that she had foolishly put everything she had on the line. Jessica sat quietly for a moment, staring at her hands clasped together on the table. It doesn't matter. I love you. Yes, you continue to be sure that your love means something special. Why do you think your love is important to me after what you did? It's obvious that my love for you means nothing to you. So why should I value your love? But I don't want to lose you. Well, I don't understand why you thought you could completely destroy my trust in you and expect to keep me. You took me for granted, and now you don't deserve me. Jessica looked confused. I'm going to my place. I still have a lot of work to do around the house. I'll be back to have dinner with you and the kids. Please don't bother me until then. I got up and returned to my apartment. Leaving Jessica was terribly painful. I wanted to hug her like before, but deep down, I knew there was no going back to what we were. The Jessica I thought of as my wife was not and never will be again. Everything I will ever have with her will be a painful reminder of everything we could have had, everything she carelessly destroyed without a second thought or an ounce of guilt. Before dinner, the kids and I went to my side of the house to look around. I showed them the new kitchen area and how I was going to cut out the back wall and make it all glass to overlook the new pool. They looked worried as they looked at the fence dividing the backyard in half. They realized that this side would be Daddy's. I then showed them where their new rooms would be on my side of the house. Why do I need 2 bedrooms in the house, Dad? Tommy asked. Because this side will be my home, and that side will be your mother's home. Emma, are you and Mom getting a divorce, Dad? Mom doesn't say anything no matter how many times we ask. No, they just separated. I don't want to be a dad for the weekend, so I thought I'd just split the house, and you two can live on whichever side you want that day. Before we could continue, Jessica poked her head through the front door to announce that dinner was ready. We ate in silence. Jessica was tense. It was clear that the children learned more about what was going on. I'll move in with Dad as soon as he finishes decorating my room, Tommy blurted out too loudly. Jessica had a shocked look on her face. Dad said that you are breaking up. We are not. It's just a misunderstanding, and we're not done discussing it yet. Emma slammed her hand on the table and shouted. Who changed? I want to know. Emma and Tommy looked back and forth between Jessica and me. I stared at Jessica. Jessica stared at her plate. When Jessica began to cry, the children got their answer. I told the children that their mother was tired and needed some rest. I helped Jessica up and walked her to the bedroom, undressed her, and put her to bed. I quickly kissed her forehead as if she was a little child who had woken up from a nightmare. I turned off the light and closed the door. I focused on feeling for Jessica as I would have for one of my children, an adult child who committed a terrible crime and was sentenced to prison for the rest of his life. I would still love my child, but he would no longer be a part of my daily life or thoughts. First, I went to Tommy's room. He lay on his bed and corresponded with his friends. I asked him if he wanted to talk about it. He said no, not really. I went to Emma's room. Emma was angry and crying. Why did she do this, Dad? You have to ask her. You can't just forgive her. Then I would never be able to forgive myself. Emma sighed. I know, but I want us to stay together as a family. We are together. I just won't sleep in the same room as your mother anymore. I hugged Emma. We said we loved each other, and I returned to my part of the house. This has become our new normal. I always left for work before the kids got up, so our morning routine didn't change. Jessica and I still split our time between taking the kids to their friends, to group activities, and to sports. We still had our usual family dinner together whenever we could in Jessica's half of the house. Jessica tried to talk to me about us about once a week, but I turned her off, saying I didn't want to discuss it. Another obvious change was school functions. I have never stood or sat next to Jessica during our children's school activities. If Jessica sidled up to me, I immediately apologized and went to the toilet. When I returned, I sat or stood somewhere else. I've never been alone for long, as at least one of the single or divorced women we knew quickly found themselves next to me. And yes, they always asked, and my answer was. We separated. Over the next month, I bought new clothes, new appliances, new kitchen cabinets, and new furniture for my side. My side has been transformed into a swanky new bachelor pad with a giant TV and a new entertainment system. When I bought a new top-of-the-line convertible, Jessica tried to ask me about our finances. Jim, can we afford all this? This car must have cost a fortune. Well, Jessica, my car was 8 years older than yours, and I needed a new one. You always bought a new car twice as often as I did, so I just invested a few of those missed years into my new car. As for everything else that's new, you really didn't expect me to live in a shack, did you? What about the furniture? I thought I was being considerate by not forcing you to give up any of the favorite furniture you bought to decorate your home. I would be happy to share our furniture. It's okay. I've never been attracted by your taste in furniture. Have you never said anything before? I never said anything before because I wanted you to be happy, and furniture didn't matter much to me. I let her think about that statement for a few moments. Don't worry. We have enough money. In fact, the house is paid for, and as soon as the children move out, my side will be too big for my needs. I'll rent out my part of the house for extra income, so money won't be a problem. Jessica gave me her best smile, her "someone is going to get lucky today" smile, and reached out to squeeze my shoulder. I'm not complaining. I like your new car. You've been working out and looking sexy in your new clothes. Thank you. I can't take all the credit. Tommy and Emma wanted me to buy a convertible so they could drive it, and Samantha helped me pick out new clothes and furniture. We have very similar tastes. Jessica's smile disappeared at the mention of Samantha, and her hand fell from my shoulder. Oh, I was just wondering. Jessica then turned and walked away. I wasn't trying to throw Samantha in Jessica's face, but Samantha was becoming a big part of my life. I also realized that I now think about Samantha quite often and very little about Jessica's feelings. Samantha began to become a regular on my side of the house. At this point, Tommy and Emma began to spend most of their time on my side. Tommy had already moved into my side as his master bedroom. Emma, who had mostly stayed on Jessica's side, began hanging out with Samantha more and more. Samantha seemed to become Emma's cool older sister. Soon, Samantha began spending all weekends and most weeknights with me. The only disagreement Jessica voiced was when I insisted that Samantha come with me to our family dinner for the second time. Jessica was polite, but everyone could tell she didn't want this to become a regular thing. The next day, Jessica ran into me as I was leaving for work. Jim, I appreciate you talking, but I wish you wouldn't bring your girlfriend during our dinner. This is our time to be family with the kids. This is wonderful. In the future, I won't come to dinner when Samantha isn't there, but I will also have an open invitation for the kids to have dinner with me and Samantha if they want. It's not fair, Jim. This is the only time we can be together as a family. So are we being fair again, Jessica? Okay. To be honest, Samantha is becoming a big part of my life and I want her to be more involved. Samantha and the children get along great. I don't think excluding Samantha from our family dinners is fair, to her, to me, or to the kids. If you want to exclude her, you're going to exclude me too. But Jim. Jessica, your honesty has always been that you put yourself to hell with my feelings. I bet you thought you were being honest when you slipped out the back door to have sex with Mike Holden. Even though we were no longer living together, it was surprising to see how easily Jessica thought she could still manipulate me. Jessica thought she had leverage over me beyond the well-being of the children. Jessica, you threw honor out the window that night, so if you don't like it, fair would be to start cooking all the dinners on my end and I'll let you come over when we have them. Samantha is a great cook and loves to do it. With tears in her eyes, Jessica said. I'm sorry I brought this up. Samantha is more than welcome to come over for dinner anytime she wishes. After the pool and hot tub were completed, Tommy especially enjoyed having Kim, Chrissy, and Susan come hang out by the new pool. They flirted shamelessly with Tommy. I know they were having a friendly competition to see who could make him blush the brightest. They first started competing by wearing tighter and tighter swimsuits. In the end, Chrissy couldn't really compete because her large breasts wouldn't allow anything too small or they would fall out. But Chrissy won after she kissed Tommy in the pool, pressing her big breasts against him. Tommy couldn't get out of the pool for a good 10 minutes, even though the water was cold. Tommy was definitely the real winner in their competition. As a result, Tommy gained more confidence from the girls and started a girlfriend at school. Once they met Tommy's girlfriend, the girls stopped flirting with Tommy and treated his girlfriend like the luckiest girl in the world. Samantha has some wonderful friends. And no, I never allowed Jessica to come to my side of the house. I didn't want Jessica to complicate my relationship with Samantha. But unfortunately, a few years later, Samantha graduated from high school and we broke up. I saw it in Samantha's face when we went to Susan's wedding together. I knew that I was essentially becoming her sugar daddy because of our age difference. It didn't matter to me, but I could tell it mattered to Samantha. Don't get me wrong, we got along wonderfully. We spent the whole weekend together, and I got to know most of her family. We often went on vacation together, sometimes with the children. When she mentioned that she was thinking about moving, I proposed to her. She told me that for her, I was honored that I invited her, but that she wanted to try living independently. I told her that I would like to start a new family. She never said it, but I saw the conflict in her eyes. I was the perfect man for her, just not the right age. Unfortunately, I felt like the other woman was taking me for granted. Ed for being a great guy. As subtly as I could, I tried to make Samantha realize that her long list of standards was becoming a wall that no man could climb. Trust is the foundation of healthy relationships, but, as with Jessica, I became a victim of my own success. I could tell Samantha thought guys like me were a dime a dozen. I pointed out to Samantha that Jessica was thinking the same thing, and look where she is now. When Samantha replied, "Would never be so stupid," our fate was sealed. In the end, I told Samantha that I understood, and if she changed her mind, would always be there for her. Maybe we'll meet again later in life when she feels like the age difference isn't that important. I don't regret a single moment spent with Samantha, and at least she had the decency to talk to me honestly instead of sneaking out the back door of the club. As for Jessica's friends, my former friends, I ran into them from time to time, and they tried to convince me that I should return to Jessica. After they released their tripe, I always ended with, "Sounds very convincing. Now tell me how you feel when your spouse cheats on you." Because from what I saw that night, not only do they find cheating acceptable, but they encourage others. In fact, I don't think it was a coincidence that we ended up at a club that Mike Holden was known to frequent. I just happened to have the hottest wife. Karma is what it is, and a few months later I heard that the girls had decided to move their girls' night out to a new dance club that Mike Holden frequented, without telling their husbands. One of Dave's friends at work mentioned to Dave that he saw David dancing with Mike at the club. He even mentioned that Mike disappeared about an hour later, around the same time the table full of ladies left the club. Dave's friend did not see David leave with the group. All the wives denied that they were there at all and said there must have been a mistake. A few days later, Dave's friend sent a photo of him and his girlfriend at a club. In the background, Mike Holden could be clearly seen talking to the wives at the table. The wives finally confessed, but they all said that no one went with Mike. Of course, their stories didn't match, and eventually the true story came out. But not wanting to give away their friend, the wives refused to say who was the one who left with Mike. Unfortunately for them all, when they finally named David, it was too late for any of them. Too many lies and trust had been damaged. From what I was told, when all the husbands met to compare wives' stories, Dave's closing comment summed it up. They covered for each other for a long time. They all lied to us too easily. This isn't their first girls' night out. How do we know it wasn't just David's turn to have fun with Mike Holden or anyone else, for that matter? Every husband saw the expression on his wife's face when Mike Holden approached our table that evening. Everyone heard how their wives condoned Jessica's behavior and how lucky she was to have this chance. After the first bachelorette party that Jessica attended, all the guys knew their wives would be excited because Jessica talked about her time with Mike. At first, the husbands were happy to get a little extra stimulation in the bedroom. But a couple of months later, one of the husbands joked to another about how much he hated sleeping on silk sheets. After comparing, both husbands realized that the silk sheets were new and both sets were white. In conversation with other husbands, 4 beds with new white silk sheets were discovered after David's night with Mike. The husbands became concerned that their wives were reliving their own nights with him. All 4 couples divorced within a year. I found out about all this because Dave was the first one to get divorced, and he apologized to me after he told me what led to his divorce. Each husband later personally apologized to me for their role that night with Jessica. Everyone basically said, "If I had stood up for you then, perhaps I would have sent a clearer message to my own wife, and we would still be married." As for Mike Holden, his penchant for picking up married women ended up pissing off the wrong person. Nobody knows who did it, but as Mike walked out of the back of the club with his latest conquest, someone in a ski mask tasered Mike. Before Mike could come to his senses, the guy hit him in the private parts. While Mike was screaming, holding his crotch, the guy literally crushed both of Mike's kneecaps. Even though they had the video, no one was ever brought to justice. There were too many husbands who had reasons and opportunities. Mike lost the ability to walk. As for Jessica, the last time we talked about us was the day Emma moved out. We were already divorced, and I had already rented out my part of the house and moved into a condo by the sea. Standing in the driveway, Jessica asked if she could talk to me after Emma pulled out to go to college. "Jim, I still love you. I made a terrible mistake, and I've regretted it every day since. Since then, I have not dated or even looked at another man. I know you haven't been in a serious relationship with anyone since Samantha, and I'd like you to move in with me again, just to see how it goes." Jessica then took the necklace off her neck and handed it to me. At the end of it hung my wedding ring, the ring I gave to David the night Jessica left me. Jessica looked at me with hope in her eyes. "Linda, you still don't understand what went wrong. That night, you thought you could test my love for you when in reality it was a test of your love for me. But I really love you. No, you like what we once had. You love that you had the perfect marriage, the perfect husband, the perfect children. You liked that I didn't treat you like property, like a trophy wife, that we shared important decisions. You loved that our lovemaking, although less frequent, was just as intense as when we first met. You liked that I always cared about how you felt ahead of everyone else. You liked that I gave you financial security to do what you wanted. But more than anything else, you liked it that I trusted you without a doubt. Now you love me more than before because you know that you will never find anyone else who would make you as happy. No one will be as in love with you as I once was." Jessica didn't move. She still held the necklace at arm's length, but her hand turned white as she clutched it with a desperate grip. "You didn't appreciate what you had, and now it's gone. I can't be near you anymore. I will never again put you in a position where you have the opportunity to do what you did to me. I always thought it was us against the world, but you killed us when you ran away to be with Mike Holden." Jessica began to cry. "How many times do I have to say that I regret going with him? It was never about Mike, Jessica. You thought you were lucky when Mike Holden decided to take you home with him. But I was lucky too when I was at my lowest and your friends tried to convince me that I was a fool for being upset. I realized that you showed me that we truly are a wonderful couple, but not because of you, but because of me. You left because my love was so strong, not yours. My love would never even think of doing what you did. My love was the music to which we also danced, which made us so special." As I was sitting at that damn table, angry, thinking about these things, I saw Samantha across the room looking sad. When she saw me looking at her, she smiled. Her wonderful smile reminded me that I was still a man, and I had a chance to be happy with someone that I could pour my love and devotion into, a different us. Then you opened my eyes and set me free. With that, I climbed into my convertible and drove away with a big smile on my face. I couldn't wait to get home as soon as possible. Samantha quit her job out of town and moved in with me last week. Since then, she has done an excellent job of convincing me that she always needs me in her life. Trust is a wonderful thing.